Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. This is a great great day for us. I'm very excited to have Tom Johnston here. He's a longtime BOWA pro, and he's over years and years has refined a lot of surface protection techniques and dust control techniques. And he has some really neat ideas I've never seen anywhere else, and knows a lot about all the different materials we use. So I'm really excited to have him here. Let's talk about what we're going to cover here. These are all the things that BOWA does to protect clients' homes, to keep them clean, to protect surfaces that we're going to keep intact during the process of a renovation. You'll see we talk about a lot of specific products in this talk. These are just what we know work and the things that we think are good value and that are easy for us to get right now. So next week, if you find another product that is better, let us know, and we will, we can change our recommendations. But for now, these are the things that we're using. Some other methods that might work on some jobs or in some situations. And we'll also cover some things that we know don't work. So we really don't want to do some things that we'll talk about here. All right, why is this important? Well, these are key aspects of running a remodeling job. Our clients, they don't necessarily know how to do house wrap or kick-out flashing. They can't really tell if we're doing a great job or a mediocre job. But if we put a lot of dust into their living room, they know we're not doing our job very well, right? So it's important that we keep their house very clean. It's important that we protect things that we tell them we're going to protect, their hardwood floors or their new cabinetry. So these are things that are very important. We're highly professional. Part of being a professional is keeping everything clean and protecting things that we need to. So let's jump right into this and start talking about how we control dust on our jobs. So the first important aspect of controlling dust is to have a good barrier between the workspace and the house. So we build dust walls, and we'll talk about a few different ways to do that. Another important aspect of keeping dust where we want it is using the negative air technique, and we'll go into a lot of details about that. And another thing is to block off the HVAC ductwork or filter it. We don't want to get dust inside the HVAC system. And last, there's a lot of techniques we can use that just don't create as much dust, so that's really helpful. Let's jump right into dust walls. This is how we're going to enclose the work area so that the dust stays within the area that we're working. So this is the old standard, the wood wall. Really easy to create. You just buy a bunch of 2x4s. One thing that we have figured out is to use sill seal material to sort of make a gasket that prevents dust from getting through at the top or the bottom. So an easy way to build these is to measure the floor to ceiling height, cut your studs and your top plate and bottom plate so that together they're about 1/8 inch shorter than that distance, and then put sill seal on the top and bottom, and when you push the studs together it'll compress the sill seal. So that makes a very easy construction technique. You tack the top and bottom of the studs so they don't fall out, and it's even a good idea to run a couple of screws into the framing in the ceiling so that if the wind blows or somebody knocks it with a 2x10, it doesn't fall over into the job site. Another way to do this is using zip walls. Now, Tom brought in some zip walls, and these are a really great technique. Why don't you go ahead and show us how those work?
This one's set up right now, and I'm just going to take one pull and put the other side up. I don't know if everybody has had an opportunity to use zip walls, but they're simple, fast, and they can be moved around. And it just clips on the top. And this clips on this side.
There's a little bit of a pad, or like a tacky pad on the top of that, right?
You want to keep this clean. You just take a wet one or something, make sure that's clean, because if it isn't, touch it, any moisture, you're going to get a dirty ceiling and end up having to paint it. So that's, and you pull it across nice and tight, and it twists, locks into place. Now, if you're on a surface that's a hard surface, the bottom can slip out. They have these pads that you can put under them. When you do it, sometimes I let it down about 1 inch. It'll still stay up. And you can actually pull the plastic underneath, so it's a good seal on the bottom and on the top. And you can slip this ring on a hard surface to keep it from sliding out.
Nice.
Okay. And This is you can also use one, this is for the wall clip. If there's a surface you didn't want to tape to, you can use this to clip in to your railing and the wall. One bad thing about this, you have to be tight to the wall. If you got wide crown molding, you can't use this. It'd be ineffective. It has to be tight up against the wall.
Huh.
And up at the ceiling, if you want a real tight barrier, you can also have a foam pad that clips in. Well, this one does not clip in to this rail. They have old rails and new rails. That's the old rail. You have to buy new clips for the new rails. And it goes in the rail. And it goes up. And same thing, slides into the rail there. Except it only goes certain parts on the rail. And it will go up to the rail. And you can hold that plastic tight to the ceiling.
You can see how quick and easy that is. These come in different types. These are the high dollar 20-foot poles, which Tom was pointing out, they're much stronger than the other versions.
Yeah, they're more stable.
Because they have more sections. Even when they're retracted, they're stronger. Yeah. So they might be worth the upgrade. And they come in sets with the bars and the side clamps and all that stuff too. One thing about the zip walls, they're not as strong as that wood wall, and if the wind blows, it can try to pull the plastic down. So taping the perimeter of the plastic is also another way to make them stronger. And then the last way to make some dust walls, this is what we use in the small jobs department a lot. We just tape plastic to the ceiling and drape it down. This is perfect for a 1 or 2 day job if you're not working on a window where there's going to be a lot of wind. So it's just a way of separating where you're working from the rest of, for example, this kitchen. And it's, it's obviously it looks very professional. It helps the clients feel like you're doing a good job. So this is something that Tom came up with, which I just think is the most amazing idea. One of the big issues with dust walls is the wind is always pushing on them. But if you do this, cut a hole in it and put a furnace filter over it, some of the air can go through without taking much dust, hardly any dust, and you get the best of both worlds. And weren't you saying about the what size to use?
Yeah, if there's a lot of air movement, you want to use a larger filter to get to reduce that resistance, and you want a rectangle one rather than a large square one, because that will actually allow too much flapping of the plastic. And you just tape it to it, the filter to it, and go around the other side and cut out the plastic up against the cardboard, and it comes right out.
Okay, so the tall and narrow style
Tall and narrow
works
style,
better.
yes.
Gotcha. Another thing we're going to want to get in and out of the dust wall, depending, most of them we need to go through. If you're going through one all the time, probably a good idea to put in a door, right? So we're taking doors out of a lot of our projects, so just take that door out, walk it over, and screw it to one of your 2x4s, and voila, you got a door. You can also buy like a home center screen door, $30, put plastic over it, or buy a new door panel from the home center. So that's a really easy way to do it, to get a reliable, easy-to-use door. Another thing that we do on a lot of our jobs is we use these self-adhesive zippers. So I think you have one in a box there.
Yeah.
You stick it to the plastic and then cut the line between the two halves of the zipper, and then you have an opening. Now, if you're gonna be going in and out of this a lot, it's better to use 2 of them. And you can see on here the zip wall ones actually come with these hooks. So when it's time to bring in the 200 2x4s, you roll the whole door up, put it on the hooks, and it's out of your way while you're going in and out, and you can roll it back down later.
When you do cut, after you put the zipper down, you want to use this because it cuts a double area. So when you do the zipper, it doesn't stick on the plastic.
Oh, that's right. So it comes with an actual cutting tool that removes a strip of plastic. Yeah,
Yep.
Good one. Another way to do the door is right out of the EPA RRP training manual, cut a vertical slot, and you can see in this middle drawing they actually have us putting a little piece of tape at the top and bottom so it doesn't tear out, and then just put a flap over the front of that. And as long as we have our negative air working, that should be just fine. So you don't even really need the zipper if you don't We used to use these a fair amount, but we've started having problems with the zippers. I mean, they were never very convenient because you're zipping, unzipping, zipping, unzipping. But when the zippers started tearing out pretty early on, these are expensive, so we've decided these just aren't worth it. The zippers don't work. So one other important thing about dust walls is you want to think about where you're setting it up, right? If you're going to be finishing the floor up to a doorway, you want the wall to be far enough out away from it that the work can actually be done in that doorway. So in this example, we boxed out with some foam board. And one other important thing about plastic walls is some of the tools and techniques we use will damage the plastic. They're like the air that comes off of a flooring edger pushes so hard that you really need to put something else there, like a piece of foam board or plywood, because it'll just tear out the plastic otherwise. So another important thing, set up where you're not going to need to move it. Or if you are going to have to move it, as Tom was saying, use the zip walls, and then you can move it back and forth several times without hardly costing much work, because it's pretty easy to change.
And one of the things, as far as the plastic that you use, it's good to use at least a 2 mil plastic. I usually use a 4 mil plastic, but I would use a 2 mil minimum, because with the wind, they can tear, so
Right.
that'll
Yeah, that's a
reduce
good
that.
point. So that's all I have on dust walls. Anyone have any other things that they've learned over the years they want to share? Questions? Okay.
Another good plastic is it's called clean cover.
Clean cover? Okay.
It's got a static,
Okay.
and it just basically sticks to itself. Sticks to whatever.
Okay. So when you're putting up against a wall, it kind of sticks to the wall, right? I think I've seen that.
Protective products carries.
Protective Products has that. Okay. All right, good to know. Okay, let's move on to negative air. This is sort of the key that makes any dust wall work, even if you can't be perfect with the dust wall, which we can't. You know, they have doors and zippers and stuff, so there's always little holes. Negative air, the basic idea is we're going to blow air out of the work area. And then that's going to make the work area negative air pressure, so it's lower air pressure than the surrounding area. And any time that any air that's going to move through the barrier is going to be sucked into the work area, because the pressure here is lower, the pressure in the house is higher. So the air can't really move from the work area into the house. It has to move from the house into the work area. So you can't get dust from the work area to the house while that's going on, because all the air is coming toward the dust. So that's the idea of negative air. It's a very simple concept, and it works great, and it allows you to have imperfections, which are pretty much inevitable. So how do we do that? We'll talk about what kind of fans we use. You know, on many of our jobs, we're just working in one room or two rooms. We just use inexpensive box fans from the home center. They don't cost very much. They're very easy to use. You can see we fill in around it with foam board or something else, cardboard. And they have professional versions of those that are more expensive, but for my money, if you're going to spend money on an upgrade, this is the way to go. Buy one of these carpet dryer restoration fans. They aren't inexpensive, but they're very powerful. And they're versatile. You can do a couple neat tricks with those, and they turn out to they hold up really well. Like, I think I bought this almost 15 years ago, and we've been using it in dusty conditions continuously ever since, and still running strong. So those seem to be working out really well for us. These are the minimum standard for BOWA for condos, because they're much more powerful than the box fans, and they're quieter, and another couple reasons. This is one of the best things about them. You can use ductwork with them. So this is 10-inch round ductwork attached to the inlet side. So that allows you to use it in a sliding glass door or another shape opening that the fan itself won't fit in. And you can even use ductwork on the outlet side. So you can set it on the floor and just tape up some cardboard to go out through a double hung window or something like that. They're really easy to use, and as I said, they have multiple speeds. You can always use it to get the negative air that you want. So those are pretty cool. Another option for negative air is a machine. They actually call these negative air machines. This whole concept and idea came from the asbestos and mold remediation folks. So these are the machines they use. They have very good filters, HEPA filters, that take all the particulates out of the air. So these are great when you're discharging air somewhere that you want it to be clean. So if your window in your work area faces a neighbor, or if you're in a high rise, you don't want clouds of dust going out the side of the condo. We actually own one of these right now. It's called a build clean. It has a really neat feature that it automatically changes speed depending on how much dust is in the air. So that's kind of cool. If you set it up inside your work area, it'll ramp itself up and down in speed. But we can also rent these if we need. So we've used these on a lot of condo jobs. And one other fan option. This is a machine that's designed to collect dust from your woodworking machines. So it's designed to work with 4-inch hoses. And you can buy a 4-inch hose 100 feet long for about $30 anywhere, any home center or lumber yard. It's that drain tile stuff, right? So if you're working in an interior room, you don't have a window to set a fan in, you can hook that hose up from the outside through the house into your interior room, and you can pull the negative pressure in your interior room with one of these things. We used to recommend making your own half-baked OSHA not-approved fan that you can chop your fingers off in and electrocute yourself with. But then we thought about it, and we don't think that's a good idea. So don't do that anymore. Not recommended. So one thing that is recommended is to use filters on your fan. If you're using a fan that isn't very powerful, you have to use a filter that it has a lot of open holes in it, right? So it's amazing how much dust will collect on these inexpensive filters that you can see through. It really does collect a lot of the dust. And that helps with the fan and helps keep the lawn clean and stuff. So any filter is better than no filter. But one of the really nice things with these powerful fans is you can use the better filters, and you can get almost all the dust out of the air. So this is another thing that's pretty much our standard. This also helps protect the fan itself, keeps them lasting longer. So that's a must for when you're running these techniques. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about some of the particularities of managing a negative air situation. One of the things that you want to know is it working or not? And it's pretty easy to tell, actually. If you just look at your protection, if the protection's being sucked into your workspace, you got it. You're done. If the protection's waving back and forth, or worse yet, if the protection's bowing outward from the workspace, something's wrong. And a lot of times when we're working with the windows or doors open, it can be hard to maintain the negative air. So there are a few things that will really help. One is to block off as many of the holes as you can find. So it's really important to do the one right by the fan, right? Yeah. If you don't, it's just pretty much going around in a circle. You can tape the perimeter of your dust walls if they're plastic. If you take up the subfloor, you're looking at a bunch of big holes that go through the house. They're connected to ceiling lights and who knows what else. A lot of air can come through those. So block those off with plastic, or you can take an old bat of insulation, put it in a trash bag and stuff it in there. That'll stop most of the air. So you just want to keep all these holes covered as much as you can. All right, to summarize, we're going to suck air into the work area, so air is coming from the house into the work area, and dust can't go into the house. Pretty simple. Works great as long as you can maintain the negative pressure. All right, so we're going to do that on all of our jobs. Here's another important thing. We definitely don't want to fill up the HVAC system with a bunch of debris. It can actually cause problems with functioning. It can clog the condensate drain. Mold and stuff can grow in there. So this is pretty important for the health of our clients. With returns, many of the houses we work on don't have lots of returns. They might have 1 or 2 for the system. So you can't block off the return. If you can block off the return, that's better. But a lot of times we can't. So we're going to have to do a really good job filtering the air. The best way to do that, or an easy way to do that, is to tape a good filter directly to the wall over the grill. So you can see this filter is going to block all the dust going through it, and it's a pretty good filter. It's one of those maybe MERV 5 or whatever, a good one. And you can even add another filter on top of this, one of the mediocre ones, like on the day when you're doing all kinds of demo or you're sanding the floors. Put another filter on top of it. That'll catch most of the dust, and then this one will stay kind of clean. You can vacuum these off to keep them clear every day, and that's the way to manage the return side. On the supply side, probably we're just going to want to close it all off. If you have a supply register in the work area, first of all, we don't want dust and debris to get into those while the system isn't running. You don't want clouds of dust going into those. But second of all, if it's blowing air into the work area, that's going to interfere with our ability to maintain a negative pressure. It's going to be positively pressurizing. So if you block it all off completely, that helps with maintaining negative pressure. So, and then of course, turn the system off on the days when you're doing the worst stuff, if you can, which depends. Some days it's 0 degrees outside and the system's got to be on, or 95. All right, so let's talk about reducing dust in the first place. There's a lot of things we do on most of our jobs to collect dust. I see a lot of these Festool setups. You have tools with vacuum setups. That's a great way to go. This is a specialized contraption you put around your miter box. Tom, you were saying that Zipwall has a thing like that, right?
Well, you can use zip walls for that. Same thing as I've used that in a condo, put zip walls around, and I used it in another collection system.
Okay.
Also.
So it's still throwing your tool's throwing the dust back, but right into a piece of plastic that collects right
Exactly.
below. Okay, that makes sense. Zip walls can make it easy. Another thing we can do is kind of filter the air within our workspace. So that Build Clean device that we have, you can use it as a recirculator. You don't have to duct the air out of your workspace. You can just have it recirculate the air, and it'll clean all the air that goes through it. And they also have machines that are made for woodworking shops that do that. They're essentially just a fan with a filter, and it's designed to take sawdust out of the air, so it works on any kind of dust. And then go ahead, Tom. What do you got there?
This is one of the AirNet filters. They're this one can go over a small fan. They have a larger one, and the 20-inch box fans, which are those, which also I had pre-filters on those too. It's also a good thing to do is put the pre-filter on them. But at the end of the day, you can, what they recommend is if you need to wash them, just have a bucket of water, soak them, put them in a plastic bag, take them home, wash them, dry out, and put them back on.
Okay, so they're
reusable.
You just put this in the middle
They're
of
down
your
to 5
workspace,
micrograms.
and all the air going through it.
Microns.
Okay, 5 microns. I gotcha.
Microns.
All the air that's going through it, it cleans all the dust out of that air.
Exactly.
So your workspace is much more pleasant, and there's just much less opportunity for dust to get into the client's house. Another technique that I like to use when I'm doing demo is to just spray everything with water before I tear something out. You know, when you pop off a piece of trim, there's always that nasty dust behind it. If you spray water all over it first, for some reason, it seems like most of that dust gets stuck to the droplets of water. It's an amazingly effective technique. So that's a good one. Also helps before you sweep up. I mean, obviously it makes it so it's a little bit mucky, but that's a good technique. This is one of Tom's jobs. You just cut outside instead of inside, right? No, much less dust if you do that. So that's a simple one. Another thing that maybe isn't that obvious is just keeping a clean job site. People are in there every day working, but if you knock off early on Friday afternoon and vacuum the place out, it just makes it much more pleasant on Monday. It looks good for the clients. A lot of advantages to that. If you're working in a condo, you might want to vacuum the whole place daily, or at least the entryway, so that you're just tracking less stuff into the home. So continuous cleaning, a good method for reducing dust. All right, so here are the things we talked about. Good dust walls, always using negative air. Take care of your HVAC system, and reduce dust in your work systems. Any questions or ideas about those? Okay. All right, let's jump into surface protection. So there's a lot of techniques for this. Any surface that we're trying to protect is usually worth a fair amount of money. So we spend a lot of money on protection, but it's usually worth it because when it goes wrong, it costs a lot of money, right? We're going to do a good job. Different surfaces, different types of work going on above them, we're going to use different types of materials to protect. So what are some of the things we want to protect from? You think about a floor, a cabinet, walls. What are some of the things that could damage that? Tools. Number one for cabinets, right? You're walking along with your tool belt and doink, oops. How about dropping your hammer on your floor? My brother-in-law was helping me put shoe mold on my newly finished floor, my new house, and he dropped his hammer right in the middle of it. And I actually thanked him because then I didn't have to worry about doing that myself later. I was like, oh, finally. I was really worried about this floor. Now I don't have to be. Yeah, so we have foot traffic. We don't want to get dust and debris rubbed into stuff, right? Got to protect from that. Dropped tools, dropped materials. It's even important to protect against liquids because people bring their food to the job site, right? Everybody's got a soda or a bottle of water. And you can also scrape things with all the stuff you're carrying around. So there's a lot of stuff to protect from. Some of our, this is what we're going to talk about how, some key things about using tape, which actually, there's much more to that than I would have thought. And then we'll talk about how to protect all these different types of surfaces. So the first important thing with tape is try to tape to stuff that's easy to repair, because tape sometimes damages the surface, right? So here we have a painted ceiling that would have cost, $50 to repaint if the tape damaged it. And we have some irreplaceable wallpaper, which we've peeled the front face off by taping to it. So that was not what we should have done. Should have taped to the ceiling instead of the wallpaper. Generally speaking, you just don't want to tape to wallpaper. You never know what's going to happen with that. Expensive faux painting, tape to the painted trim next to it, not to the Venetian finish wall. Cabinets are questionable. Even though most cabinet finishes are very durable, you never know, and they're very hard to repair. And the same thing with hardwood floors. Taping to hardwood floors is very risky because a repair is just such a nightmare. So we'll talk about those things. Tom, tell us about how to remove tape the best possible way.
Well, most people usually just remove tape and just pull it straight off. Well, that's going to pull most likely going to pull some paint off with it. But coming at this direction at a 180 degrees direction to the tape at a low angle, and it usually comes off. And if it's been there for a while, you might consider using a hair dryer. That helps heat up the glue and helps release it.
That's a good one, the hair dryer. I didn't know about that. Yeah, so pull it at that sharp angle makes it a lot easier. So before we get into all these surface protection things, I just want to mention that most of the specialized materials we're talking about come from these two suppliers, Protective Products and dropcloth.com, or KS International they're called. So these will be in the video, these links will be in the video for people who join us later and watch that. So those are the two companies. Let me know if you need the information, the contact info for them. So let's start with the hardest one, hardwood floors. How do you protect a hardwood floor? So first of all, as I said, much better not to tape to hardwood floors. Tape to the baseboard next to it, tape to the risers on the staircase. Don't stick stuff to hardwood if you can possibly avoid it. Of course, if it's being refinished, it doesn't matter. The reality is that a hardwood floor with a good polyurethane finish on it that's in good shape, probably you can tape to it, and it probably won't damage it. But it's probably better not to if you can possibly avoid it, just because it's so much harder to repair than other things. So to do a good job with protecting a hardwood floor, you kind of need two different things, right? We need a soft layer that protects against, keeps dust and debris out and doesn't allow things to get scratched. And we need a hard layer that stops impact damage from us working above it. So if you don't have if you only use the hard top layer, you get what happens in this picture. These little spots here, these are where a piece of debris got under a protection board and got crushed into the floor, so it damaged it even though we had the floor protected. So that didn't work out. And if you only use the soft layer, you can drop a hammer on it and it dings the floor right through it. So you got to use both if you want to do a great job. So this is an example of us. We're going to be doing a lot amount of work in this area. So we put down both layers. Obviously, it's a fair amount of work, and this is what's called for if you're working with tools and scaffolds and ladders and stuff like that for a while. So for our first layer, we found this material, Econo Runner, is really great stuff, right? Everyone's probably used this, right? It comes in these rolls. It's tacky on one side, so it stays in place. It's not slippery. You don't slip on it. It even works on staircases pretty well. And then it has a plastic layer on the other side, so liquids can't go through it and dust can't go through it. So if you put it down and tape it all to itself, you're going to stay nice and clean underneath it, and it's a little bit padded, so dust and debris can't ever scratch into the floor. So that's good stuff. The only issue with this is because it's waterproof, you can't put it on a newly finished floor because it interferes with the curing process. So we use something different for that. This stuff, Surface Pro. So there's the sticker from it. Surface Pro is a lot like this. It's a felt material, but it doesn't have that plastic layer. So that's what we use that for, is newly finished floors. You tape all the seams, and we'll talk about this in a sec, but because you want air to be able to get sort of through your protective materials, only ram board should be used on top of Surface Pro in the first couple of weeks after you finish a floor. We'll get into this here. So if we're going to put a hard protective layer on top of these materials, Masonite is great over a floor that isn't new. Very protective, easy to clean. Lowe's sells a version that has a painted top.
Painted with textured surface.
Textured surface, so it's not as slippery. So it's good stuff. We've reused this on multiple jobs. You do have to, it's kind of hard to cut. You have to cut it with a saw, basically, right? Unlike thermoply. Thermoply you can kind of cut with a knife if you work at it real good. It's not that easy, but you can. Thermoply doesn't last as long. It's a little bit softer. It's not as durable. But it is a little bit easier to install. We use a lot of that. And then ram board is sort of another option. Nowhere near as protective, much thinner, but much easier to cut and install and less expensive. And as Tom pointed out, it's breathable, so you can use it on a newly finished floor. So all three of those are pretty good. So we're going to protect our work area with all those layers. Usually our walkway from the workspace to the outside, we'll just put down a sort of a runner, and Econo Runner is great for that. Surface Pro if the floor was newly finished. Tom was pointing out that if you have direct sun on a new floor and you have a runner sitting on it for a couple of weeks, you can actually get some differential fading even in just a couple of weeks. So it might make sense to cover the whole hallway if you're going to do this, if it's a newly finished floor that gets direct sun. And then paper, I've seen people trying to use paper for this. We actually had to refinish a couple of floors in the last few years where it looks like someone turned on the paper and the paper twisted and scratched the floor. So I just don't think paper is good enough. We should really stick with the Econo Runner. Now, not all of our jobs do we require this bulletproof setup with all these layers. When we're doing a small job or just a one-day thing, we still want to make sure we have some impact protection and we don't have the problem of having dust or debris underneath our protection scratching the floor. So a moving blanket, or if you take a tarp and fold it up a few times so that it's multiple layers, that works great. Please use something under ladders. You have electricians working on a hardwood floor. Don't let them put tape a blue booty to the ladder leg. Put something more solid under that. And one other trick that we use a lot in our small jobs group is we buy the piece of Masonite from the home center, 2 feet by 4 feet, and put that in front of the dishwasher, lift the feet on, you can slide it out really easy without scratching the floor. So those are pretty useful. And there are some other materials out there. The only thing wrong with these is they cost more and they're more slippery. This is a material, if you're in a bind though, you can get this at any home center. This is sold as underlayment for pergo floors. You can see it's a soft felt with a plastic top. Reasonably good material, it's just expensive and slippery. So it's not bad, it's okay. Stay away from the paper though. And one other thing I'll mention, they used to sell big rolls of cardboard at our lumberyard, and we used a lot of that back in the day, and it was great, but they stopped selling it. So that's why it's not really a recommendation right now. But if they start selling it again, we can use that instead. All right, any questions on hardwood? Okay. So carpet is much simpler because we pretty much have one idea, and it's to use this stuff, the clear carpet protection roll from Protective Products. Has everyone used this on jobs? Yeah, it's really good stuff, right? You stick it on the carpet and unroll it. It's very tacky. It sticks really good to the carpet. Easy to clean. Go ahead. Shouldn't leave it down there for 2 weeks, right? Yeah, there is a limit. in my opinion, it seems like how much foot traffic you get on it is a big determinant to that. Yeah. So right, if you leave this down if you're walking on it all the time, it's in the middle of your work area, you leave it down for much more than a week or two, it's going to start really sticking to the carpet, and it can be hard to get out. And if that adhesive starts sticking more to the carpet than to the plastic, it's almost impossible to clean up. And the way to deal with that is to replace it every week or two. So, I mean, you can maybe go 3 weeks, 4 weeks if you're not getting a lot of traffic, but it's risky at that point. Really good material, though. Here's something that some of our carpet subs do. They just unroll a big sheet of plastic and tack it down with little scraps of carpet and nails. This works great. It's not quite as protective. You know, you can get dust through it, but it's a really good protection method. I like that. Trick I learned from Renee Castro: roll the carpet protection a couple inches past and fold it under your area rug. That works really well. And another trick with this is to buy the buy the 24-inch rolls. They sell it in 3-foot and 4-foot rolls. Those are fine for open rooms, but for hallways and stairs, you really don't want to be wrestling with a 3-foot piece in a 3-foot or 2'11" wide hallway. That's no fun. So use that stuff. And they sell some other materials. This is blue hard floor protection, and as Tom was pointing out, it's a lot less tacky than the clear. So for sometimes you can use that for carpet protection, and it seems to work pretty well. Yeah.
Really works well on over tile too. So
Yeah.
to keep them.
One thing we do want to avoid is using off brands of carpet protection. So the bad thing with this is if you leave it on too long and it starts to stick to the carpet, but we've had that happen immediately with other brands. So other brands of carpet protection I would just stay away from. Just buy this stuff. We have a couple rolls in the office. If you're short, just give me a call. We can get it to you right away. And another thing we tried and I think was a bad idea is using tarps. They're a trip hazard is the short story of it. So just use the plastic. It's much safer for everybody. And then as Tom was saying, for hard floors, tile, stone, and vinyl, you can use the blue floor protection stuff from Protective Products. Rolls out very easily. Obviously there's no impact protection, but it's great for dust. Makes it easy to clean. Put something else on top for impact protection. So stairs usually have carpet or hardwood on them, right? So it's very similar to protecting carpet or hardwood, but there are some tricks, so let's just cover that as almost a separate thing. First of all, the carpet protection rolls, as I said, you're going to want to use the 2-foot wide roll, not the 3-foot, even though staircases are supposed to be 3 feet wide. It's just too much wrestling to get that down. They do make a special version of it where the adhesive is on the other side. It's supposed to be easier to install. Has anyone used that? I've never actually bought it.
I've used it.
Have you?
It is easier.
It's easier? Okay.
It's a lot easier.
So if you're doing stairs a lot, you can get that special roll. Another setup that works really well is to use EconoRunner, as because it's a little bit sticky. It's very safe. There's nothing to slip on. It's really attached to the staircase. If it's going to be there for long, or if you're going to use a different type of roll material, here's a really good way to make it safe and easy to, less of a trip hazard. You put strips of wood there and tack them into the treads or the risers with 18-gauge finish nails, which are easy to pull or clip off later. So that one's an easy way to keep everything in place. Here's an example of using EconoRunner, and you can see that I love this picture because they taped to the painted risers and not to the stained treads, so it'll be really easy to repair if something goes wrong with that tape. So that's good. And then they put the little strips in and tacked them to the risers. That's a good way to do that. Another technique that actually Tom taught me this one, thermoply is good for stairs because you can cut halfway through it and fold it over the nosing, and then you have protection for the front of the tread as well as the top. So that's a good one. And then I just saw this on a job last week. Eddie came up with this. So if you take a couple of pieces of 1x and attach masonite to it from underneath, then you can fasten that to the sides of the painted sides in this case. So it's easy to fix the holes in the painted skirt board. That's a really good way to hold a hard, solid tread on there. This is us doing a similar thing on another job with OSB tread covers that are attached to the riser. I think using 18 gauge trim nails is probably a better idea than drywall screws because they're easier to repair the holes, but other than that, these both look really good. Now, I didn't really like this one. What could we have done better on this one?
Well, you tape to the hardware there.
Right? That's one. Yeah, you're right about that.
Probably put the runner on the bottom of that.
There you go. Yeah, that's the thing that I thought was, seeing what I've seen with hard stuff directly on the wood with debris getting under it and scratching it. Yeah, you'd want the soft stuff on first and then the hard stuff on top. And then you're right, it's better not to tape to it. So, there you go. Okay, cabinets. Anything will work on cabinets. Cabinets usually come wrapped in protection, right? They come with acres and acres of cardboard that you don't know what to do with. Well, tape it to your cabinets and you're protected. You can also use this fan fold insulation. Econo-runner is actually great for cabinets. And I guess for countertops, weren't you saying Protective Products has a special material for countertops?
Yeah, they have it's a gray hard plastic material that has creases in it that you can fold to standard size countertops.
Okay.
Comes in rolls.
That sounds good. Uh-oh. That's my own phone. I swear I put this thing on vibe. I'll be darned. Okay. All right. Railings, a little bit complicated, right? This is sort of the old technique, wrap sill seal around it, and I was really glad now we're building houses where the handrails are like the size of the, I don't know what, they're huge. Well, you can get this bigger sill seal from our local lumber yard, but Tom pointed out that you should just use a piece of Econo-runner and wrap it over, and then you don't have to spend half an hour taping each railing because it's self-adhesive, so it sticks to it. That's a lot easier.
You can cut that with the cut saw, just
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Put the roll in your chop saw,
chop saw. Boom.
make it into a 12-inch wide
Right,
piece and fold it
exactly.
over the railing. Yeah, that's a good way. It actually is kind of hard to cut with a knife. It's kind of like Tyvek, like it dulls your knife right away. It's funny. Here's another thing we did. Had little round graspable handrails. We just slipped pipe insulation right over it, made it really easy. And again, we used fan fold. These are glass railings. Believe me, we wanted to be careful with not hitting that with our tools as we're walking around. And this is another very simple, very effective technique that I got off of Tom's last job. Right? Wrap it all up with cardboard.
Cardboard worked well.
Inexpensive, easy to tape to, very easy to do. All right, let's talk about bathtubs. It's pretty easy to scratch a bathtub. I used to have the bathtub repair guys on speed dial because I made this mistake a few times. So people sell this material. There's this paint-on bucket goop, and they also have that blue threshold tape. You want to hold that up? It's sort of like a heavy-duty soft tape. In my opinion, neither of these is really ideal. The bucket stuff is expensive. It takes a long time to apply. It isn't really all that protective, depending on how thick you manage to get it on. And then this threshold tape, it's just not very good tape. It leaves residue all over everything. So I don't think we should be buying that blue threshold tape, basically. So instead of that, this is off of Joe's recent job. You can use Econo-runner, run that down into the tub. It sticks to everything, keeps tile and grout and everything from getting under the Econo-runner. And then make yourself a nice cover. In this case, there's two covers on this one, right? There's a piece of thermoply and a structural piece of OSB, so the tile guys who are going to stand on whatever you put on there will be able to stand on it. So that's a good way to protect the bathtub. Let's talk about walls. So walls don't get nearly the traffic and impact damage and everything, right? You just don't want, you want to avoid scratching the paint. So, kind of anything that'll stay up, even 6mm plastic is pretty good protection for most walls. Maybe not the doorways where you are going to ding them, but just for going along a hallway in a condo, that's what we used in this one. So almost any material will work for that. One of the hard things is how do you attach it? And here's a technique that someone came up with. This is a wallpapered wall We're definitely not going to tape to it. It's a 2-story foyer. We can't drape something from the crown. So they made these little rainbows of foam board. I mean, anything you can do that'll hold up. I really like this because, look, they also wrap the jambs of the door down here. I mean, this is really exemplary. The plumber's going to come into here. They might put their toolbox on something instead of putting it on the marble floor because they saw what a good job we did. We'll see. That's a good one. So speaking of threshold tape, where I learned about how bad threshold tape was is where we used it on thresholds. And then you try to take it off, and it takes days to get it off of a threshold if you leave it on there for a month or two. And it leaves goop and stuff goes through it anyway. It holds debris under the edge and scratches the threshold. So this stuff is no good. But Tom came up with a much better idea. Yeah.
No residue tape. It's 6 months, leaves no residue. That's usually the case, but even in direct sunlight it may have a little bit, but none like the other product.
Right.
And I'll use this and usually put it on the threshold, and then I'll usually use like a Gorilla Tape over top of it for that added protection from the foot traffic. But this will prevent the residue. This is also great taping that plastic to the wall if you got crown molding. This will hold the 6 mil plastic. Blue tape won't hold the 6 mil plastic. You can put this tape on any like trim that's painted with a gloss surface or semi-gloss or even satin surface on it, and we'll pull as long as it's painted well. No dust underneath the paint and things like that. It should not pull off. You can use it quite a few. The only places I wouldn't put this on are floors and walls that are painted flat, matte, or even eggshell. But other than that, you can use this tape.
That's good to know. Yeah, that seems like a really neat product. Now, do you just get that? That's in like the paint department?
It's in the, not all Home Depot sell it, but
Okay.
most of them do.
Okay.
And sometimes you get it from Lowe's, but Home Depot normally carries it.
Home Depot,
If I don't buy it out from them.
Gotcha. All right. If Tom hasn't been there that day,
Yeah.
Home Depot will have it. All right. Let's talk about outdoors. We got to be careful with people's driveways. They get very sensitive about these things. If we're going to have a dumpster up there, we'll put a sheet of 3/4 sheet good under there, either OSB or plywood. Plywood seems to hold up better if you're going to be there more than a couple of months. Otherwise, the OSB just gets thicker and thicker and weaker. So you might want to go with plywood if you're going to be there for a while. And Mick actually taught us this trick. This is a really good one. We had a couple of jobs where the kind of goop that, when it rains, that runs out the end of the dumpster would get on the driveway and it would kind of, get, I don't know what it is, drywall dust or whatever, turn the driveway white where this rainwater was washing across the driveway. And then you're pressure washing 2 square feet of it, and the rest of it doesn't look pressure washed. So this is a great way to deal with it. Put a tarp under the plywood first and make it so anything that runs out of the dumpster runs into the mulch. Problem solved. So that's a really good one. I think we've started doing this on all of our jobs now. And we've also had a couple of jobs lately where we're working over a deck. And these synthetic decks, you can't sand and restain a Trex deck, right? It has to be protected if you damage it. And they're kind of soft. It's pretty easy to scratch them, especially if you're set tools up or carry any materials over it. So this is what we did on one recently, just laid out pieces of thermoply and weighted them down with pieces of lumber. Anyone have any better ideas on that? I thought that was pretty clever because you don't really want to tape to it outdoors. Who knows what's going to happen to that synthetic material if you try to stick to it. I thought that was pretty good. So that's it.
Thermoply. Plastic underneath it. Sometimes the gray color can rub off on tile.
Oh, really? Okay, that's a good one. So Dante's pointing out that.
The red printing.
And the red
also on the other side.
Right, so thermoply has a gray color on one side and red printing on the other side, and whichever side is facing your floor can scratch off or adhere to the floor, so always use another layer in between. Yeah, I mean, that's what we would sort of recommend normally anyway, although we didn't do that here. So I guess as you're saying, just put a piece of 6 mil plastic underneath it to protect the the deck from getting that color. That's a good one. Now, we didn't have an issue with this. This has already been taken up, so I'm glad it worked out, but that's a good one. Okay. All right. Any questions on surface protection?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We use Ramboard, you haven't mentioned that once.
Yes, we use Ramboard. I meant to bring a roll out. We have one in there. So Ramboard is good on top of this stuff, generally speaking, or for a really short duration job where you're never going to get any dust under it, right? So actually, Ramboard is the right stuff to use on top of Surface Pro because Ramboard is also breathable, so the floor finishing curing process can still happen through the two of them. Yeah.
One consideration for dumpsters too
Mhm.
is plywood may not be adequate in August, or
Yeah.
if you're going to be a real heavy load of stone or soil,
Mhm.
you may want to use a 2x12.
Use 2x12s. Yeah, so I don't disagree with that at all. So the comment is to use 2x12s under your dumpster wheels if it's the hot months of summer where the asphalt gets softer and softer, or if you have a very heavy load. It's a lot harder sometimes to get, depending on the skill level of your driver, it can be harder for them to land on that. So you kind of have to be there to watch that. With the plywood, they can pretty much nail it, but you're absolutely right about that. Any other tips? Okay. Great. Thanks, everyone, and especially thanks to Tom. Love the filter idea, and thanks for doing the zip wall demo. Really appreciate it. Thank you.